think. Okay, hi everyone. We are at the north shore of Stanley Park underneath the Lions Gate Bridge, which you can see in the background behind me. There's several different things that we want you to look at here. And let's start by looking at the ground that I'm standing on underneath us. We're obviously by the water here, so we're along a coastline. And there's two different surfaces underneath us. If you look towards your right by the water, you can see some bedding. It's not very well exposed because it's been weathered and modified by the water. We have some plants and seaweed growing on top of it. And then here we have a bed of, what do you think the grain size is if we look closer at that? I would say these are pebbles and gravel mostly. And then behind me, I don't know if you can see on that side, maybe we can pan it around, there's sand. So we have a range of different grain sizes here. I want you to think about where these clasts have come from. If you can see some of the clasts in the video, look at their shape. Do we have lots of sorting here? Are they rounded? Do you think they've been transported far? I can give you some information. We do have some sorting here, so we're on a slope, and the larger particles have moved probably by gravity closer down towards the water. But we do have some of those beds underneath exposed. I'm not going to tell you here what those rocks are made from because we're going to see those further along this tour and in some of the other activities on the field trip. But I do want you to think about how they are weathered. Mechanically, what is doing the weathering here? Do you think those beds have been weathered by the action of the water coming in? Or do you think they've been weathered by the action of this sediment? Or do you think they've been weathered by the combination of the two acting together? So discuss among your groups what you think the weathering process is here. But the weathering has produced what we call a wave-cut platform. So a flat surface of bedrock, and you can see some of those layers sticking out, covered by this sediment, which has experienced some sorting. And if you just had sand, you might call it a beach or a gravel beach. In the background, you can see the bridge, the Lions Gate Bridge. This is a large bridge. It's a massive structure, and obviously the engineers who had to construct that bridge needed to think about the geology underneath us. So my second question that I want you to discuss in your groups is, do you think this surface would be a good foundation for building a bridge on? So this kind of wave cut platform with a sediment covering. If you don't think that that would be a good base, a good foundation to build a bridge like that on, then what kind of rock, what kind of substrate do you think would make a good material? And perhaps we'll go and look at some other candidates at later stops. And then the final thing to note here is if we look across the water and pan around, we have the mountains on the north shore, and we have looked at some of these in classes with James in 223, and you've seen some maps of this area. So you might remember that these are made of granites. These mountains, and I want you to look at the shape and the texture. You've been flying around loads in Google Earth and you've seen loads of different mountain ranges here. We've also looked at fluvial topography in particular, so how rivers in size and cut down. Remember, we've been looking at these V-shaped valleys and that kinds of outcrop patterns that you get from dipping sedimentary layers. If you think back to many of those V-shaped valleys, they're quite sharp. So we have quite sharp edges, and we don't see that here. These are really rounded mountain forms compared to many of the places you've been looking at in Google Earth. So I want you to discuss in your groups why they are so rounded and what geomorphic activity has happened on this landscape that has resulted in a rounded topography, and some of these perhaps maybe you can see some U-shaped valleys. Certainly if you move around from this location in Google Earth, you'll be able to see some U-shaped valleys. So have a discussion of the topography of the North Shore Mountains as well.